Question 11. If a car runs at a constant speed and takes 4.5 hours to run a distance of 225 kilometers, what time will it take to run 150 kilometers? Now, one thing I need you to notice is that the question says that it is a constant speed, meaning that this speed also applies to this second scenario of 150 kilometers. So right now the parameters were given, the time is 4.5 hours, the distance, initial distance is 225 kilometers. And so that speed, we know that the formula for distance is speed times time. If you make speed a subject of the formula, that becomes distance all over time. So our speed in this case will be 225 over 4.5, which is 50 kilometers per hour. So that means that speed also applies to this new distance of 150 kilometers. And we're asked to find the time. So from here, we know that our time being made the subject of the formula will be distance all over speed, which is 150 over 50, which is 3 hours. And that is option C. Question 12 says we should divide this number 1101,001 base 2 by 101 base 2. So this is number we're given. Now, this is like normal, long division, but with a twist. Now, when we're doing your normal long division, is normally in base 10, but now we're dealing with base 2, so we have to be a bit careful. Now, since there's three digits outside, that means we have to take at least three digits here. And if we take the first three digits, can 101 enter into it? Yes. 101 can enter into 110 only one time. So 1 multiplied by 100 will give us 100, right? Now, normally, if you are doing normal long division, we would have said 110 minus 101 and then would have said 9. But that doesn't apply here because, like I said, it's base 2. So we know that 0 cannot subtract 1. So when I borrow 1 from here, instead of it being 10, it's going to be 2 since we're dealing with what? Base 2. So that makes it 2 minus 1, which is actually 1, right? Now, I now bring down this 1 from here to come down here, right? Now, can 101 go into 11? No, it cannot. So that's why this 0 is here. So since 101 cannot go into 11 and I've already added my 0 here, that means I have to bring down another 0. So when I bring down this 0 here to join it, now 101 can enter 110 one time again. So 1 multiplied by 101 will be 101. When you subtract just like before, you are going to end up with 1. So I bring down this 0. Can 101 enter into 10? No, it cannot. So 0 will end 0 by 101 will be 0, right? So allows me to bring down this one again. So when I bring down this final one, now 101 can enter into 101 once. So 1 times 101 will be 101, and then that gives me a remainder of 0. So that means that my answer will be 1010 base 2, which is option D. Question 13 says that if 3 minus root 3 all over 2 plus root 3 is equals to a plus b root 3, what are the values of a and b? This is a topic in maths known as surds, right? So we're going to do something to be able, we're going to get rid of the denominator, right? I don't want my denominator to have surds. And how do I do that? I do it by multiplying this by something called the conjugate. Now, the conjugate of a surd is simply what you multiply it by to get 1. So, for example, this is 2 plus root 3. So, the conjugate of this will simply be 2 minus root 3. But this is the initial equation I had, right? And if I were to multiply only the bottom, that means I will be altering it. So what do? I multiply by 2 minus root 3 all over 2 minus root 3. This way, I'm actually not altering it because we know that 2 minus root 3 over 2 minus root 3 is 1. And 1 times anything is darted. Are we following? So I now multiply these two together. So hence this. So this is now going to be this side. We're multiplying it by the numerator here, and then the denominators are going to multiply themselves. So as you can see here, 3 times 2 will be 6. Negative root 3 multiplied by 2. Sorry, 3 multiplied by this negative root 3 now gives us minus 3 root 3. Then minus 3 multiplied by 2 becomes negative 2 root 3. And then root 3 multiplied by negative root 3 multiplied by negative root 3. We know that minus times minus is plus. And then root 3 times root 3 is simply root 3 all squared. Now we'll do the same thing for denominators. 2 times 2 becomes 4. And 2 times negative root 3 becomes negative 2 root 3. Root 3 times 2 becomes 2 root 3. And then root 3, this plus and minus, so that's why we know that plus multiplied by minus is negative. So root 3 times root 3, that is root 3 all squared. And then we know that negative 3, negative 2, since they have the same number under the square root, then that means that I can do this minus this. So minus 3 minus 2, that becomes minus 5 root 3. And we know that root 3 squared will be 3. Now for the bottom, 2 root 3 minus 2 root 3, that is 0. And then this squared is 3. So that becomes 4 minus 3. So when I do that, 6 plus 3 it becomes 9 minus 5 root 3. And this is 1. So that means our answer is 9 minus 5 root 3. Now, if you compare this to the equation which we are given, which is a plus b root 3, we find out that our a is 9 and our b is negative 5. And that is option A. Question 14. Find the value of t if the distance between the points P, which has the coordinates of minus 3, minus 14, and Q, which has the coordinates of t and negative 5, is 9 units. So now these are the coordinates. Now, since the first point we're given is P, so we are going to call this first x coordinate x1 and the y coordinate y1, and we'll do the same for Q. So our T which we're looking for is our x2, and this minus 5 we're giving for Q is our y2. And we're told the distance between them, PQ, is 9 units. And so we know the distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. And so we simply substitute each of these into their places. So x2 we know is t. Now that will be minus, we know that x1 is minus 3. So that's why this is minus 3 in the brackets. Then this is all squared plus y2 is minus 5. Hence this minus 5. Y1 is minus 14. So that's minus 5 minus minus 14 all squared. So that will now be square root of t plus 3 squared plus minus 5 plus 14 squared. And 1 at 14 minus 5 is 9. So, and 9 squared is 81. So this becomes 9 is equals to root t plus 3 all squared plus 81. And we know that in order to remove this square root, we simply have to square this side. So we square 9 to become 81 and the square root is removed. So we take this 81 to the other side and that now becomes t plus 3 squared will be 0. And that means that since this is squared to be 0, that simply means that this will be t plus 3 is equals to 0. Because the only two numbers you can multiply to give is 0 are 0, and this the only same two numbers you can multiply to give you 0 are 0 and 0, right? So that means that automatically t plus 3 has to be 0. So that means that if t plus 3 is 0, that means that t, which is our x2, is negative 3, which is option C. Question 15 says, at simple interest, a man made a deposit of some money in the bank. The amount in his bank account after 10 years is 3 times the money deposited. If the interest rate stays the same, after how many years will the amount be 5 times the money deposited? Right. Now, formula for amount is principal plus interest. Principal is actually the money you donated, right? And interest is the amount of money that the principal, gets added as time goes on. And so the formula for simple interest is principal times rate times time all over 100. And the question told us that the first scenario, the amount is actually 3 times the principal, and the time it took for this to happen was 10 years. So that means that we place this interest of 3, no, we place this amount, since the amount is 3 times the principal, place it to this formula. So that becomes 3 times the principal will be equals to the principal plus the simple interest, right? So we'll place this formula here, but we'll have our time. So we'll replace t with 10. And this 0 will cancel this 0. So our formula now becomes 3p is equals to p plus pro over 10. We take like terms, so p will come this way and become negative p. 3p minus p, that becomes 2p. So 2p will be p arrow all over 10. These two p's will cancel each other, leaving us with 2 as arrow over 10. That means that our rate will simply be 10 times 2, and that makes our rate 20%. Now, the rate remains the same like the question told us. And the second scenario now is that the question is asking how much time will it take for these amounts to become 5 times the principal that was initially deposited. The question said that after 10 years, it was 3 times the principal. So how many years will it be when it becomes 5 times the principal? So once again, we know that amount is principal plus interest. So 5 times the principal, which is our amount in this case, will be the principal plus the interest. Now, in this case, we're looking for time. So what we have now is actually the rate. So replace our arrow with 20, right? All over 100. 20 here will be 5. So this becomes 5 principal is equals to principal plus principal times time all over 5. I take principal this way, and that becomes 5p minus p is equals to pt over 5. This becomes 4p is equals to pt over 5. These two p's cancel out each other, leaving me with 4 is equals to t over 5. That means the time it takes is that it will take 20 years for it to get, for the amount to get to be 5 times the principal, and that is option C. Question 16 says we should evaluate this limit. So the limit as x tends to 2 is for this equation we're given. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is that normally when you're giving limit question, you simply just have to put the number wherever you find x. But if you try and do that here, if you put 2 squared minus 2 times 2 here, you find that the denominator is 0, and you know that you cannot divide by 0. So the first thing we do is that we factorize both of these functions. So when you factorize the top function, you get x minus 2 into x plus 6. And you factorize the bottom function, you get x into x minus 2. And we can see now that this x minus 2 is common to both of them, so they can cancel out each other. So when they cancel out each other, they leave me with this limit. So the limit as x tends to 2 of x plus 6 over x. So I can simply put 2 here and I put 2 here. So that makes it 2 plus 6, 8, and this 2 here. So that's 8 over 2, which is 4, which is option A. Question 17 says the ages of students in a small primary school were recorded in table below, and I should estimate the mean. Now we should realize that this is a grouped table, so it's not like it's going to be a straightforward way, the way you normally just get the mean. So this is a table that is taking into account the fact that these are class intervals. So this is the class intervals we're given 5 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, respectively. So to get the class mark is simply the average of each of the intervals. So that's why we have 5.5, 7.5, and 9.5. And we're given the frequencies already, which are 29, 40, and 38, respectively. So now to get our total frequency multiplied by the class mark, will simply do 5.5 times 29, 7.5 times 40, and then 9.5 times 38. Our total frequency, when you add all this, is 107, and then the total, the frequency multiplied by the values we're considering will be 820.5 when you add all this. So I'll know that the mean is simply the summation of them all over how many they are. So that will be 820.5 all over 107, which is approximately 7.7, and that is option A. Question 18 says a committee of 5 people is to be chosen from a group of 6 men and 4 women. How many committees are possible if there is to be a majority of women? Now, if the majority are women, then it can either be 4 women and 1 man or 3 women and 2 men. Because remember that the question says that there are 4 women only, right? But the committee is going to be made up of 5 people. So that means that if women are going to majority, there are only 2 scenarios that are possible: 4 women and 1 man, or 3 women and 2 men. So now we're going to use combination, right, to be able to get the total number of ways that the committees are possible. So that will be 4 combination 3, right? Because we're that's for the first, these 3 women and 2 men. We're picking 3 women from 4 women. So that's why it's 4 combination 3. And we're picking 2 men from 6 men. So that's why this 6 combination 2. So this scenario. And then this is this other scenario where we are picking all the women, and we're picking just 1 man from 6 men. Now, when you do 4 combination 3, that will be 4 times 15 plus that will be 4 for 4 combination 3. 6 combination 2 is 15. 4 combination 4 is 1, and then 6 combination 1 is 6. When you add this together, you get 66. So the answer is option C. Now, if you are wondering how I got the answers for the combination, this is the formula for the combination. N combination arrow is simply n factorial all over arrow factorial into n minus arrow factorial. So you can punch this in and then confirm the answers for yourself. Question 19. We are given a 3 by 3 matrix here, and we are told to find the determinant of the matrix. Now, One thing I need you to know is that to find the determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix, what happens is that we start with each of the topmost, the topmost row. So we take the first number in the row and then we isolate the column and the row that that number belongs to. So for example, now this is 2. So we're going to isolate this and we're going to isolate this. So we're going to now find the determinant of just these four numbers, right? So we take this 2 and then that will be equal to 1 times 1. How we normally find our determinant? Minus 2 times minus 3. So that's for this first column, right? And one thing you know is that when you're finding the determinants for a 3 by 3 matrix, know that the signs alternate. So the first one is positive, but the second one will be negative. So this will now be negative, negative 1, because now we're dealing with this column. We isolate this column that this number belongs to. I will isolate this row. So the numbers we're considering will be 4, 2, 1, and 1. So to find the determinant will be 4 times this one, which is here, minus 2 times this one, which is this. And then the last row will go back to positive again. We isolate this column, isolate this row. So these are the four numbers involved in finding the determinant. So that will be 4 multiplied by negative 3 minus 1 multiplied by 1. So when you do that, you now solve, you open up the brackets and then you get these numbers and then you solve and then you end up with, you simplify all this becomes 7, this becomes 2, minus minus 1, that becomes plus 1, and this becomes negative 13. So when you do that, you are going to get 14 plus 2 minus 39, and you find that the determinant is negative 23, and that is option C. Question 20 says a boat sails 8 kilometers north from P to Q and then sails 6 kilometers west from Q to R, and we should calculate the bearing of R from P. We should give our answers in the nearest degree. Now, the first thing is that I drew a diagram here so we can visualize the question. The question says that the boat sails 8 kilometers from P to Q and then sails 6 kilometers west. Now, you know that this is north, south, east, then west. So 6 kilometers west. And then the question is said we should find, the bearing of R from P. I know bearing is always taken from the north direction. If you are taking the three, the three digits bearing, the three figure bearing. So that means that the angle we are actually, or the bearing we are looking for will be from here all the way to here. But then in order to get that angle, we first have to find this inner angle, right? So to get that now, we look at this. Now this is opposites and adjacent. So the trigonometric ratio we use is called tangent, tan. So tan of this angle, let's call it theta, will be opposite over adjacent. So that's why you have 6 all over 8 here. And 6 over 8 is 0.75. So that means that tan theta will be 0.75. To find only theta, we'll simply find the tan inverse of 0.75 and that brings us to 36.87. But remember that this is only this angle. To find the actual bearing, we know that the whole angle here will be 360. So we'll subtract this from 360 and we know that our bearing is approximately 323 degrees, and that is option B.